Roy Rogers has long been known across the United States as the Cowboy of America, a symbol of kindness, integrity, and nearly ideal family values in the public eye. On screen, he always appeared as a flawless hero, representing an idealized image of the American West that generations of audiences grew up with. However, behind that spotlight lies a deeply personal family story that was only revealed and publicly confirmed decades after his passing. Notably, it was his own daughter who spoke out, offering a different perspective, not to contradict Roy Rogers' image, but to shed light on the real man behind the legend. That story, when disclosed 28 years later, led the public to re-examine his entire life in a different light. Not only as a screen legend, but also as a father and husband who made emotionally complex and deeply human choices. Before becoming Hollywood's King of the Cowboys, Roy Rogers was born Leonard Franklin Sly in 1911 in Ohio, into a poor rural family. His childhood was far removed from stage lights or cinematic glamour, consisting instead of simple labor, where survival and adaptation mattered more than dreams of fame. During the Great Depression, he left his hometown to work as a migrant fruit picker in California. It was during these difficult years that music became an emotional anchor. Singing around campfires with fellow migrant workers not only helped him endure hardship, but also awakened his ability to connect with others through melody and lyrics. His first major turning point came when he joined a musical group called the Sons of the Pioneers and began performing professionally. Their music quickly attracted attention, and not long after, Hollywood opened a new door. In 1937, he signed with Republic Pictures and officially adopted the stage name Roy Rogers, a name that would become inseparable from the history of American Western cinema. For more than a decade, Roy Rogers became one of the most beloved Western film stars. He was not only an actor, but also a cultural icon, closely associated with familiar figures such as his intelligent horse Trigger, his loyal dog Bullet, and his signature Jeep Nellie Bell. At the height of his career, Roy Rogers was more than just an entertainer. He had become part of America's collective memory, a representation of justice, honesty, and simplicity in a rapidly changing world. If his career made Roy Rogers a symbol of the American West, then Dale Evans helped shape the most profoundly human part of his life behind the spotlight. They first met in 1944 in Hollywood's film industry, where both were experiencing strong career growth. From their earliest interactions, there was not only professional chemistry, but also a rare sense of emotional and spiritual alignment. After the death of Roy's first wife, his relationship with Dale Evans gradually evolved from colleagues to life partners. They married on New Year's Eve in 1947, beginning one of the longest and most enduring marriages in Hollywood history, more than 50 years together in an industry known for fragile relationships. What set them apart was not only their fame, but also their worldview. Roy and Dale were both deeply committed Christians. Their faith was not merely personal, but formed the foundation of how they raised their children, chose their work, and faced life's hardships. They frequently appeared alongside well-known evangelists such as Billy Graham, openly sharing their beliefs as an integral part of their lives. Professionally, they were also a remarkable duo. Beyond being husband and wife, they were on-screen partners who built an idealized family image in numerous Western films. Audiences admired them not only for their performances, but also for the sense of authenticity they conveyed, as if the values they portrayed on screen reflected how they truly lived. This combination of love, faith, and work turned Roy Rogers and Dale Evans into one of the most iconic couples of Hollywood's golden era. If career and love made Roy Rogers an American icon, then the birth of Robin Elizabeth marked the moment his life took a profoundly different turn, deeper, more painful, but also far more compassionate. Robin was born in 1950 with Down syndrome, at a time when societal understanding of disability was extremely limited. Medical advice commonly suggested placing such children in specialized institutions or psychiatric facilities, treating it as a way to manage the situation. However, Roy Rogers and Dale Evans made a decision that went completely against the norms of their time. They kept their daughter within the family and loved her like any other child. They did not stop at private care. They also made a quiet but powerful statement for Hollywood at the time. Robin appeared in family photographs and was even included in promotional materials, despite opposition from an industry that preferred to maintain a perfect public image of its stars. This was not merely a family choice, but a subtle declaration of compassion and acceptance. However, tragedy struck just 2 years later. Robin passed away in 1952, before her second birthday, due to complications from measles. Her loss left an irreplaceable void in Roy and Dale's lives. Yet instead of remaining silent in grief, Dale Evans chose to transform pain into voice. She wrote the book Angel Unaware, telling the story from an imagined perspective of Robin, turning personal sorrow into a broader social message. The book went on to become influential, helping to shift public perception of children with disabilities during that era. It opened new conversations about love, acceptance, and the value of lives considered different by society. From Robin's tragedy, Roy and Dale began to open their hearts even further, not only to one child, but to many children who had been abandoned or left without families. This marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, a chapter of loss, but also one of expanding compassion and humanity. After the loss of Robin, the lives of Roy Rogers and Dale Evans did not return to the normality that many outsiders might have assumed. On the surface, they remained Hollywood Western icons, continuing to appear in public with familiar smiles and the image of a family grounded in faith. But behind the stage lights was a long period in which grief never truly disappeared, only quietly contained. Rather than withdrawing after their first tragedy, they chose to expand their family, a response that was both a form of healing and a belief that love could fill the spaces left by loss. They adopted several more children, including Mimi Rogers, a young orphan who had grown up in a wartime orphanage in Scotland. Mimi later recalled that when she entered Roy and Dale's home, she did not only find a place to live, but also experienced a rare feeling that she belonged somewhere. Alongside her were other children such as Dodie, Sandy, and Debbie, forming a large and lively household where love always came with very real, everyday challenges. But fate did not spare them. In 1964, Debbie, one of the deeply loved daughters, died in a bus accident. The shock struck the family like a new wound on top of grief that had not yet healed from Robin's passing. And just a year later, Sandy, their son serving in the military in Germany, also passed away. 2 consecutive losses within a short period left the atmosphere in the family almost indescribably tijol. What makes the story of Roy Rogers and Dale Evans remarkable is not the tragedies they endured, but the way they chose to face them. They did not hide their pain, but they also did not allow it to turn into bitterness. Instead, they held on to faith as their only anchor. Religion was not a slogan, but a way of continuing to live through each day and each loss. Roy and Dale often appeared in community gatherings, speaking to other families going through similar grief. They did not present themselves as people who had overcome everything, but as people still learning how to live with pain. That honesty made the public see them not only as film stars, but as real human beings who had been tested by life, yet still chose love over closure. From these accumulated losses, the image of the Rogers family was no longer just a cinematic symbol. It became a story of endurance, of faith, and of how people can continue moving forward even when the heart never fully heals. As they entered their later years, Roy Rogers and Dale Evans appeared less frequently in public. Hollywood's spotlight gradually faded into the background, giving way to a quieter life where memory and family became more central than career or fame. Yet even in that silence, their legacy remained deeply embedded in American cultural memory. Roy Rogers passed away in 1996 from congestive heart failure at the age of 86. His death marked the end of an era in which the iconic image of the Western cowboy still dominated the screen. 5 years later, in 2001, Dale Evans also passed away, closing a long and eventful chapter of classic Hollywood. It was only after both had gone that more private stories began to surface through family members, especially their daughter and adopted children. Mimi Rogers and others shared memories of a family that was not perfect, but filled with love and resilience. These confirmations were not meant to change Roy Rogers' image, but to add another layer of truth, that behind every icon is a human being with loss, choices, and pain. What matters most in these revelations is understanding. The public no longer sees Roy Rogers only as an idealized cowboy figure, but also as a father who endured profound tragedy, yet still chose to keep opening his arms to children in need of a home. And it is precisely this delayed confirmation that makes his story feel more complete, not because it is perfect, but because it is real. Looking back on Roy Rogers' life as a whole, what remains is not only the image of the king of the cowboys who once dominated American screens, but a long narrative of how one man confronted loss. From repeated family tragedies to courageous decisions such as adopting and raising disadvantaged children, he and Dale Evans transformed grief into a form of expanded love, not closed off, not resentful, but accepting and continually giving. His legacy, therefore, does not lie solely in cinema or fame, but in the people he touched, the homes he helped create, and the way he and his family faced losses that seemed almost unbearable. That is why his story continues to be told decades after his passing, not as a distant legend, but as a very real reminder that even in the deepest suffering, human beings can still choose to live with kindness. If you found this story meaningful, feel free to leave a like, share, and follow for more stories behind Hollywood legends, where the truth is sometimes even more moving than the screen itself.